Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Sam, and I am happy that I get to introduce you tonight to the wonderful Dr. Steve, who will be talking about pain-free foods. Now, we only have about 30 minutes tonight, and we're going to learn something, whether it's of value or not, and we get to choose how much we actually get to learn tonight. Now, on that, I don't know about you all, but I know just for myself, there are foods that I love to eat, but I can guarantee they do not love me, and that is definitely not what you want to be eating. So pay attention tonight, so we might be able to learn something, might be a little bit of a trick or a tip that we can tweak our diet to see the maximum output in our health, our lifestyle, and be able to get to do exactly what we want more often, rather than eating something and then having to pay a consequence later. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Steve, so that way he can make the most of the time.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Sam. Sure all our tech is up and working and going, and I think we are. Right there. All right. So when we talk about pain-free foods, some of us are on some levels of our knowledge of nutrition, and some of us are on other levels of knowledge. So one of the things that was talked about in the seminar Dr. Sam and I and the whole team were at this weekend was our coach's coach is helping her realize that we have to realize the world is not how we wish it would be, but it's different. Or to say it differently, no one sees the world as they are, as it is, they only see it as they are. So I'm going to start tonight with two different stories of real life things that I just experienced that for me kind of blow my mind that this could be a possibility for someone. But remember, one of my adventures over the last however many months we're in is the realization that we should be seeking first to understand and not be judgmental of where anyone is. And when we talk about nutrition or healthcare or anything else, it could be really, really, really easy, especially with as polarized as the world has become, to say, well, you believe different than I believe, so we can't even have a conversation like we might have like 5 or 10 years ago, right? So the two stories, the first one, I had to go back and watch it a second time because I couldn't believe it. So if you've ever been scrolling through like some kind of social media and you see these weird ads that show up, and I say weird on purpose. So this particular ad that showed up was for some kind of breakfast nutrition shake thing. And the way it started was a pack of hot dogs going on a desk. And it said, if you eat hot dogs for breakfast, and I went, who does that? Well, clearly somebody, so somebody, right? If, and again, I'm seeking to understand, I'm not judging anybody, but I went, so Facebook, that's a fail, because that's not my reality, and it is for some people who are seeking greater health because no one ever told them that maybe eating a hot dog, or in this case a whole pack of them, it was still frozen by the way, so I don't know what they're going for, but that a hot dog for breakfast is not a grand idea. You know, we can talk about this. I will, since we're on Facebook Live as well, and they might be watching, I'll just call it a family member, and I've told this one a couple of times, so I guess I'm telling 3 stories before we get into more content, who came to me at one point and was very proud of the healthy breakfast the person was eating. They said, it has all of my food groups. It has my bread, my cheese, my protein in the eggs, all the things. And I said, great, what's your super healthy breakfast? Any guesses? Omelet. Egg McMuffin. Yeah. Egg McMuffin.
4 major food groups.
It had all the food groups. And again, I'm not judging this person, and if they're watching, maybe they remember telling me that story when I was a teenager, but anyway. But they believed that what they believed to be true was they were hitting the 4 major food groups and they were eating a healthy breakfast. Now, by no imagination on the planet should we ever think about things with golden arches as healthy, right? Now, when you go to other countries, interestingly enough, as I slightly go off topic already, my brother-in-law recently spent 6 months in South Korea and deployed there, and the food at their McDonald's was actually good. Like, it was organic, it was real food, because they don't accept what we accept for food here. Like, you would go and you could get like actually fresh, real food from the same place that we get fresh disease from here. Yeah. So the other one is I listen to podcasts and motivational speakers and things on a regular basis because I need to fill my own cup up with the right stuff so I can be spilling over with the right stuff. Last week talked about how that's, for me, is starting my day with gratitude and the actions we're going to take and things of that sort. But the speaker was using the idea of if you really want something. And the example he used was you wake up in the middle of the night and you really want a soda. I can't really identify with that. I've never woke up in the middle of the night and wanted a soda. So I'm not getting you, like, I'm just like pinging you, I'm sorry. So what the example was, is the person gets up, they go to the refrigerator, they open the refrigerator and there's no soda. They put on their jacket, they go to their window and it's snowing out and they go back to bed. They didn't really want the soda. The next one is they get up, they put on the jacket, they go to the convenience store a quarter mile away and they're out of soda, they're closed, and they went back to bed. They also didn't really want the soda, they were settling for something else. And the third example, because we don't have time to tell the whole story, was the person got up, saw it was snowing, put on the jacket, went to the place a quarter mile, a half mile, a mile, all looking for the soda till they found it. The idea behind that, of where we're going to launch into our next step, or the bridge of that, is if we really truly want something, we don't take no for an answer. And the fact is you all showed up because you really truly wanted something. You told it to us in what we call our question of truth. It was the very last question, or close to it, that Miss Nellie asked you on your first day. And it went something like, if we find we can help you, and if you choose to have us help you, what would you love or like to see different about your health? And most of you said, I want to feel better. And because Nellie is amazing and she knows that's not an acceptable answer in my worldview, we dig deeper. So what does feeling better mean for you? What are the things you can get back to? Because if we don't have a big enough why about the things we claim we want to achieve, then we know the fact is most people are going to fall off what they've committed to and go back to the old habits. One of our jobs that we have, and I say job on purpose because you've hired us as your doctors, is to inspire you to achieve the things you say you want to achieve. And sometimes it means a little bit of tough love. I didn't know I was going to ping you with two things in one day, but hopefully you'll come back tomorrow. Because if we want to go where we want to go, we have to go with people who have done it, because we're only going to get so far otherwise. So tonight's topic is pain-free foods. And as I did start off with before I took our first 30% of our time, is some of this may be a little remedial for some of you, some of it may not. The first part of it is what we spent most of our time on the last time we taught this class a couple months ago. So we're going to move through this part pretty quick and spend more focus not on the problem, but more focus on the solution this time around. So, school's in session. If you're a teacher, which kid do you want to teach? Lots of choices. So pretty clearly, this one would be the better choice. So what I'm going to just spend my time on is, we are what we eat. That's an old saying, right? The fuel we put in our body is what results in the health that we have. There are some healthcare professionals out there that say, I'm going to use the word silly to be kind, silly things like the food we eat doesn't affect our health. And the example I often go to on this is the example of telling a breastfeeding mother that the medication that they're on for whatever the problem is doesn't make it into the breast milk. There's no way that's true. But we have a common belief that the food we eat doesn't necessarily reflect on our health. It's why when people end up with like blood clots, and I'm going to use a familial example again, I'm not going to tell you who, so I'm not calling them out online. When they go through things like they have a blood clot and it's a very serious issue and they're in the hospital and they've almost didn't survive it, and then the heart healthy diet is 2 instead of 3 sausages, are you kidding me? Like, this is the top nutritionist in the top hospital in the area where they live. And they gave them 2 instead of 3 sausages because 3 somehow was just bad enough. When they almost died of a blood clot that went to their lung, they should have gotten no sausage or hot dogs for breakfast, right? So the idea is we are what we eat, and your body can only do with what you give it. Our individual cells are made up of lipid layer on the outside, or kind of fat. And ideally, we have lots of healthy omega-3 fats in our diet. Most of us have too many omega-6s and omega-9s, which are inflammatory fats. To make it simple, think inflammation equals pain and disease. It may not be today or tomorrow, but it will result in that eventually. So one of our recommendations we're going to get to is that everyone should be on some kind of healthy omega, because they've done research and studies, and it was Dr. Dan Murphy, who's one of the chiropractic nutritionists who's like top of the world, that I do a lot of training with, is he did a study at one of the universities where he teaches, thinking these kids are in school to be healthcare providers, they're probably going to be super healthy. And what the research says is that our ratio of healthy fat to bad fat should be ideally 1-to-1, but at worst 1-to-4. So 1 healthy fat to 4 bad fats. The healthiest kid in the class, and I call them kids because they're in school and I did that, was 1 to 50. So imagine that no one's ever had this conversation, and we're wondering why we live in a world where chronic disease is rampant, why something like 30% of our population lives in chronic pain every single day, and probably no one ever talks to them about the food they're putting in their body. When we go over that 1 to 4 ratio, we start setting ourselves up for things like dementia and Alzheimer's and all these other neurologic issues that we're not going to go into detail with tonight. We'll talk about other classes. But if we're not giving our body what it needs, the individual cells can't even make what they're supposed to. So if you have individual cells that are made up of that lipid, that fatty layer of omega-6s and 9s, every single cell in your body all day long is dumping toxins and inflammation into your body. It's just simply the way it works. So maybe the only takeaway you're going to say is, yes, I'm going to clean up my diet, but maybe I should also look for a quality supplement. You don't have to buy the stuff we have up here. I don't have it up there to sell it to anybody. It's what I put in my own body because it's what I believe is the best stuff on the planet. So those are the things that we use. If you want to get it somewhere else, feel free. But know that if you're getting it here, it's been vetted and used by myself and my family for a really long time before it ever showed up. So to jump through this a little quicker is you are what you eat. So don't be fast, easy, cheap, or fake. Nobody wants that, right? So inflammation, we're going to spend maybe a minute on this slide. But this is another one of those conversations about we could believe we're doing things that are good for ourselves because the marketing companies say they're great, like the best stuff on earth. Not really. Or I hope no one thinks Monster is healthy, but maybe we believe vitamin water because it has the word vitamin in it is healthy. You got to watch out for marketing. This stuff is crazy. Yeah. So the amount of sugar that's in these quote unquote healthy drinks is pretty ridiculous. So we've already talked about the omega-6s and 9s. Red meat is another source of bad fats, and it's conventional on purpose. If you have an opportunity to get your red meat from a farmer who raises them responsibly, it wasn't that long ago that red meat had as much omegas in it as wild caught fish in the sea. It just doesn't anymore because we've basically said, let's get these cows as fat as fast as possible and fill them up with inflammation, and then we get the result. Also on here, alcohol, that's an inflammatory response. You do with that what you want, but limiting that is probably a wise idea. There's research that shows that alcohol actually reduces the frequency of the cells in your body. And to really talk on frequency, the frequency of canned food is 0. The frequency of death is 25. So if we're doing things that are reducing our frequency, then we're doing things. And when I say frequency, I'm not talking like some kind of new age. It's the electrical output that part of the body has or that cell has. So canned food is deader than dead. That's problematic. So maybe your thing is I'm going to eat a little less canned food and shoot for the frozen aisle instead, where maybe it's not the freshest thing and maybe it's not the organic food, which might be out of a price range challenge for some people, but the frozen one is not a whole lot more than the canned one and actually has life to give you. And then the sugars, we talked about that, colors and dyes. Oh my goodness, that's terrible. If you have maybe yourself or children who are challenged with, how would you say that, Dr. Sam? ADHD. Yeah, and we can cut off Facebook because I forgot it was on. Challenged with attention or, I can't think of the right way to say it, hyperactivity. We should be looking into the food we're giving them because food coloring like yellow 5 and red 40 is actually something that puts the brain and the body in overdrive, and then they literally cannot control their emotions. So we should be looking at that stuff. And then preservatives, processed foods, like I said, we're not going to spend a ton of time on that, but to go back to what happens when you put food in your body, I would bet that we have this idea that it goes in the top and comes out the bottom. Right? So when it does that, it has all these different organ systems it goes through, digestive tracts. So what I want to leave you with this slide is, we've already talked about it, but the idea that what you put in your body does have effect on your health. This is not a closed system that goes from point A to point B. So if we're putting bad things in, we're going to get bad things out. And the human body is amazing. It can take food that comes from a can that is deader than dead and make life. So if you don't think we're created by something greater than ourselves and that the power that made your body is the power that heals your body, we have some other conversations to have on a different day. Because if we can take food that has very little nutritional value and still create a body that, I'm going to say survive because it doesn't thrive, for many, many, many decades, it's pretty astounding. So who was here yesterday and remembers the goldfish thing that we did yesterday? Dr. Sam does, because it was Dr. Sam's idea, right?
Yeah.
So we had the dirty bowl with the sick goldfish or the clean bowl with the not sick goldfish. So if you have a dirty goldfish, dirty bowl with a fish in it, and fish is sick, do you A, throw some medication into the fish to help the fish, or do you B, clean up its environment first? Ideally, we clean up the environment. And every single person I asked of all the people that came in yesterday, except for one who likes to be contrary, and I know that about him, so it's fine,
Yeah.
said we clean the water.
Yeah.
What if the dirty water in your life is nutrition, and you just walk away with cleaning up just one thing? I'm not saying change your whole cupboard, because we know when we try to take on too much at one time, the likelihood that we're going to fall back to old things is pretty high. But just pick one thing to be a little bit different. Because if we can clean up one thing, then it's one less piece of inflammation that could be causing disease in our body. And then this piece, and then I promise we're going to jump past like 5 or 6 slides real quick to get to the how you fix it. But these are health foods, right? So we might think corn is healthy. I hear that. Right? Soybeans, soy is good. Like that's a good source of protein, right?
Yeah.
So soy
If you like this.
is a phytoestrogen. So my funny story to lock this one in your brains is a previous doctor that I used to, he's currently still a doctor. I used to be his associate, and we bought the practice from him many years ago. But he was doing Nutrisystem, and Nutrisystem's primary protein source is soy. So he was sharing with me how he was watching a movie that had a little bit of an emotional relation to it, and he found himself going, why in the world am I having an emotional reaction in this movie? And then he flipped over the Nutrisystem and realized he'd been filling his body with estrogen. So he was having a reaction that was outside of his normal. If you have those reactions to a movie, that's fine. But that was not normal for him because soy is full of phytoestrogens, which basically tells your body to produce more estrogen. And for men, that's not a grand idea. For women, it's also not a grand idea. I'm not saying never eat soy, but if you're someone who uses that as a primary protein source, we should be limiting it because it's messing with your hormones. Yeah, and then corn, as you said, it's those, what's the word you said?
Glyphosate.
Yes, glyphosines. And there is no corn in the United States as of right now that is not GMO.
Yeah.
It's all been genetically modified. And I wish I had more time than I do, but the brief version of genetic modified is a piece of bacteria, a piece of virus, a piece of the thing itself, all mixed together in a big blender that's going to grow something, and then we get corn. So imagine if we're putting food in our body that has DNA of viruses and bacteria, which, and again, we don't have time to go into it. We've done other workshops on how you have more virus, bacteria cells in your body than human cells in your body. So viruses are not bad. There are bad viruses, but viruses themselves are essential for life. But we're putting food in that has some of these negative ones in it that are designed to tell insects and other animals not to eat them. And then we eat them and we wonder why we have challenges in our digestive tract. And then rice, I'm going to leave you wanting that for another day. So does anyone ever buy chicken? So you go to the store, which chicken are you going to buy?
Probably see or look juicy.
Because it looks juicier and it's bigger, right? And it is bigger and it is juicier. But these little striations, and again, maybe this is the one thing. Do you know what those are? The little striations. They're fat. So this chicken was forced to grow faster than it normally would have based on its genes. So instead of good, solid, healthy muscle tissue, it's full of fat. So ultimately, this one might be bigger. It may be a better price, and it's for a reason. But the one that has the least amount of those fatty striations in is actually the one you should be looking for. So maybe next time you go to the store and you look at the chicken you're buying, you're going to say, it might be a little smaller, but the nutrient density in this one is massively superior to the one that was forced to grow too fast and is ultimately unhealthy for it. So by design, we talked about this, zipping on through. Oh, we'll zip if we can. So what's at risk is pain. It's aging quicker than your body is designed to. Do you remember from their second day how long the human spine is designed to last for if we learn to properly care for it?
125 years.
Nice, 125 years. So, I mean, if it's supposed to last that long, then could it be possible that our bodies, if we truly understood how we're supposed to take care of them? And I'm not claiming to be the expert in all things. I hope to make it to triple digits. We'll see if I get there. Hopefully I'm taking the right actions to do that. And I hope to make it there in a way. One of my colleagues, he has a bet with a friend that when they both make it to 100 years old, they're both going to run a 100-meter race. They might not be running, but they're gonna do it, and I think they can make it. So I hope to be the person at 100 who can actually like still run a race if I want to. Probably won't be the fastest guy out there, but it's a hope. So it's advanced aging, chronic diseases, we touched on that already, Polypharma. I know you know.
It has to do with pharmaceutical companies.
Yes. So
Yeah.
poly, multiple. So it's taking multiple drugs. And it's taking drugs for the drugs for the drugs for the side effects for the side effects. I mean, we've seen little comics about this, but it's so true. There are people who are on multiple, like not 2, 3, or 4, but like 5, 10, 15, 20 medications every day in an attempt to stave off the symptoms or the side effects. And we can remove the word side, by the way, it's an effect of the drug that we want. This is not a way to live.
It's a way to make money.
It's certainly a way for the
Right.
pharmaceutical companies to make money. And
Yeah.
remember, I am anti nothing. I am pro one thing because I believe that we are called to be the light, not curse the darkness. So what we are in this office is pro that the power that made your body heals your body. It doesn't mean that there might not be times when you need a little bit of help. But let's go back to the blood clot or the heart attack issue that we talked about, right? Imagine if the conversation went something like this. So here's what happens. The person has a heart attack. They're part of that percentage of people that survive it. And now they do some kind of cardiac rehab, but they send them on their way. What if instead the doctor said, for the next 6 to 9 months, you're going to show up in classes every single week. You're not just going to do rehab. We're going to teach you how to shop, how to cook, how to eat, how to change the things that put you in the situation in the first place so that you're never back on my table having a heart attack again. What if that was our healthcare system?
Everyone has one.
Game changer.
Be a game changer. Same thing with high blood pressure. What if high blood pressure medication was used short term for the situation you created, and then we changed the situation you're in instead of just prescribing more and more and more? That's not the story of our healthcare system. That is why we are called in this office and why I ask everyone who chooses to be part of this community that we've created is that it's not just about us, it's about sharing it with other people. And I'm not going to steal your thunder, Dr. Sam, don't worry. But there are so many people, remember, we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are. There are so many people that just the simple kind of, I'm going to say again, kind of rudimentary nutrition stuff that we talked about, why for some people this may be the first time you're hearing it, that could change their life. Maybe they're never going to get on a table. I mean, that would be great if they got on a table and got adjusted if they needed it. But what if we just cleaned up the fuel they're putting in and did some of the things that we're going to come with? Oh yeah. And 95% of cancers will be gone too. So back to, you guys are on the same wavelength with that money thing, right? And I don't think there's many people that would disagree with me that the pharmaceutical companies are designed to make money. It's a company.
Yeah.
Like, this is not debatable. If they don't make money, what happens?
They should then.
Yeah, the board members aren't so happy and they fire people that can make them some money.
Right.
Our healthcare system, it is not shy. It says we are a for-profit system. Our healthcare system itself, can you grab the door for me? The male person's here. Actually says that our goal is to get you somewhere between 20 and 50% improvement, and then we release you onto the world. Because the first 20 to 50% is super easy to track. And it's another 50% of getting to that thriving, those things you shared with Nellie on the first day, that takes some time and are really hard to do. It's like the X-ray wow that's up there. So I will tell you who that is. We generally won't, but that's Tori. And I can tell you that because she told me it's okay. Tori is our financial CA, if you don't have the names of the team down yet. And that is day 1 in the office in her 6th year X-ray. It finally changed at 6 years. She wasn't necessarily doing all the things we asked her to do. We found out at the seminar this weekend that the research says that only about 2% of you are actually going to do the homework we give you. So hopefully we can inspire you to be far greater than that. And I think if I just tell people that, they want to be greater than the other 98%, right? So she wasn't the greatest at doing that. And it took 6 years to change the underlying pattern that took a certain number of decades. So we'll leave that out. A certain number of decades right before it came in. Because the greatest benefits don't happen in the short term, they happen in the long term. So to go into it, I don't think I left you any time, Dr. Sam. Sorry, because I said we'd get to this. So just pick one thing. I don't want to overwhelm it. But the ideal diet is not the food pyramid, the food wheel, the whatever they try to sell us on to tell us that we should be eating ridiculous amounts of bread, which is super inflammatory and unhealthy for you. But it should be 75% raw. Now, again, there are many people out there who couldn't go to the store and afford 75% of their nutrition to be raw. So maybe it's you just pick up a little extra. You replace the bag of chips that's in your lunch with an apple instead. Little things make big differences over a lifetime of doing it. We should also be ideally eating whole foods. To give you an idea of what a whole food is, it's a whole food. It's a thing that's actually what it looks like in life. So an apple is a whole food, a carrot is a whole food. It's not a processed food. So we can actually identify it as what it really is. Imagine that. If that's all we put in our body, we could identify the things that are in it. We can actually read the words on the label. Oh my goodness. So wild and lean protein, we've touched on that a little bit. It's going to have a higher level of omegas because wild and lean is going to be fed more of what they should be eating by design and less of a let's get them fat in the market so we can sell them for a lot. Clean water. So we're going to dig into this more in the coming weeks. Dr. Ash and I, as I always share, we always do everything we bring to the office for a really long time before we do it. So we have zero time to really dig into it. But the fact is most of the water most of us drink out of taps or bottled water really isn't super great for us. So one of the things we're very likely going to be adding in the coming months is an opportunity to have access to super clean, electrolyzed, hydrolyzed water that your body can use incredibly well, hydrate better, and dump toxins out. So that's coming at some point. I got to figure out the whole plumbing thing of how to do that. But making sure you're not just, especially tap water, please don't drink tap water, or at least put it through a filter. And we already talked about moderation is key. Because I don't expect anyone to change their entire nutrition background behind what they're doing. But again, just pick one thing. Because if we can do that, we can increase our water intake. We can take some of those supplements like the omegas that we talked about. We can make changes now, and the Purification Program, we have an entire workshop related to this. Natalie and her husband just started another version of it. It's a program through our standard process company that we utilize that's designed over 21 days to flush toxins out of your body. Most people happen to lose a little bit of weight, which is not what most people are most excited about at the end, which tells you how good it is. But over that 21 days, what I love about doing it at least once or twice a year is it retrains me how to eat by design. Because it is a little bit restrictive. It is not hard to do. You can eat your belly's full if you want every single day, but it's eating the right stuff while getting rid of the wrong stuff. And when we talk about supplements, this is where we're going to end our conversation for tonight, is these are supplements to really fix what's going on. We have to start with the adjustment, not because I'm a chiropractor, but because there is nothing more important to your health than the electrical impulses between your brain and your body. We spent the last 28 minutes focused primarily on nutrition things. And nutrition pales in comparison to making sure your brain and body are actually connected. Because if you have a car and you put gas in the car and you cut the fuel line, does the engine start? No, or you pinch the fuel line, or are carburetors still a thing in newer cars? I don't even know. Or you clog up the carburetors. It's clearly not going to work so well. We can think of like a subluxation, like pinching the line or clogging up the carburetors. You could put the best fuel in, it's not going to result in what you want. It's about taking the right supplements. So the omegas, the recommendation that we should all be taking about 3,000 a day. That seems like a lot, because remember that ratio that we're shooting for. Vitamin D. Has anybody heard about vitamin D related to COVID?
D3.
Maybe. Yeah.
K2.
Yeah. 87% of the US population is deficient in vitamin D. And when it comes to COVID specifically, those who have the biggest challenges, along with the 3.9 comorbidities they have in other diseases, they have ridiculously low levels of vitamin D. So while it is not a highly publicized thing, people who have higher levels of vitamin D have significantly lower levels of challenge related to COVID or any disease. It's not just COVID. So along with that is things like magnesium. And we talked a little bit about magnesium the other day. Again, we're primarily deficient in magnesium. Probiotics, avoid GMOs. And to add in specifically to combat viruses, and take a picture of this because I do want to be respectful of time. We're over by 30 seconds. Is zinc creates kind of like a force field around your cell so viruses can't get in. Vitamin A and vitamin C strengthen it. So even if there is a virus there, your body's going to naturally get rid of it the way it should. And again, it's not just COVID, it's any virus. So there's much less likelihood that you have a challenge. But remember my ask in the middle of everything. This is a community created to really help our world be a healthier place. And if we leave tonight and change one thing for ourselves, or maybe two or three, don't be crazy and go more than that. Trust me, you'll probably drop off. Then that's awesome. And if we leave tonight and we go home and share it with the person maybe sitting across the table from us, or a neighbor that we often chat with, then we have a much greater reach. Because if we keep it for ourselves, okay, we get to be better ourselves. But if we share it with those around us, we have an opportunity to change the intellectual wisdom related to nutrition or healthcare in our entire community. And if we had a world that focused more on preventing problems instead of reacting to them, whether it's healthcare or anything else, then we would not have a world that's as challenged as it's been in the last bunch of months. We can look around the world and find areas where they live a little bit more close to what we talked about tonight, and their challenges related to what's been challenging the world have been way less. It's just a fact. So if we can help people learn to make better decisions and ultimately ask better questions, because if we don't know better, we can't do better, then we can really change the health of our entire nation. But it all starts with us just doing it in our own families. It's like Mother Teresa said, and that'll be my last comment of the day. If you want to change the world, go home and love your family. So I'm going to go do that because I know it's almost bedtime for my kids. And we have to share it with more than just ourselves. We're going to make that difference. And if it means inviting them to come to the workshop, great. If it means they come get checked, great. We have a responsibility once we know more to help those around us that are important to us do more. And if you're at home, I'm going to put that survey up right now. And if you're here, thank you for being here. We got game changer. I like that. So I'll read the comments if you guys want to hang out a little bit. Let's see what we got. So there's your survey. Aha. So it said estrogen, soy is full of what? Estrogen and phytoestrogens, to be super specific. And that was our primary comments. Awesome. All right, so everybody have a wonderful evening. If there were specific things we kind of glazed over, our workshops are not about fixing anything. It's about taking a helicopter overview and picking what we can dig into more individually to really make those changes for. Have an awesome night.
Point of interest,